Good morning. An absolutely beautiful Thursday morning. The markets are looking strong, but like yesterday, we had a bit of a head fake actually, right? Because we started off the day in the pre-market, we looked very, very strong. The Dow was up about triple digits, 100 points. All of a sudden the day starts, Dow is nowhere close to that 100 points. As a matter of fact, it never looked back. It actually had some fades and some moves and this, that, and the other, but actually finished the day down about 50 points, a late sort of sell-off. And we had a sell-off as well over in the Nasdaq. The Nasdaq was powering strong throughout most of the day, but did give back some of those gains later in the session. Finished up the day about 50 points to the upside. We also had crude oil kind of holding right around that 68 sort of level. That's been a movement that we've been watching very, very closely because the influence on many of those different names in terms of the S&P and the Nasdaq and whatever. You look at some of those energy names and specifically those beta names. Each and every day they make these significant moves, and we'll be talking about that in just a second. But volatility index, because of the fact that even though we had some movement, it wasn't a lot of movement. So we watch that volatility index continue to get pushed a little bit lower and a little bit lower and hanging right around those 16 to 16 and a half. As a matter of fact, the range yesterday for the volatility index was incredibly low. I mean, it was very, very tight range for the volatility index throughout the day. We did have some nice volumes though. We were just about 38 million contracts yesterday. Again, another nice day. But here's the interesting thing. Only one name over a million contracts. So it shows you how much this was spread across so many different other names. And it was Apple, of course. Apple, about 1.7 million contracts yesterday. Here's what stood out. You know what the number 2 stock was yesterday for volume in terms of the derivative markets? Yeah, you probably guessed it. We've been talking about it for the last couple of days. BBIG, that Vinco Ventures. Now that has been one of those, rebel stocks that we've been talking about. It traded 880,000 contracts. I've mentioned that name on multiple occasions. It also had an incredible range yesterday. Popped to new highs, got up just underneath $12. It's been all over the map. Just always remember this. We talk about this. Implied volatilities are extremely high. That movement, you've got to stay disciplined. You get moves that actually are meaningful enough and you've got your ranges that you're looking for. You need to know that, and you need to be very, very disciplined and diligent because the moves to the upside move just as fast, if not faster, to the downside. This is a great example of that. We've seen it in GameStop. We've seen it in AMC and so many of those other names over the last 6 or 8 months now, that you just have to be aware of that kind of movement and the kind of movement you're seeing there. Tesla actually followed up behind there with 850,000 contracts yesterday. Bitcoin, it's been hovering. It's been moving back towards that 50,000 level on a pretty interesting pace. Been very, very interesting to watch that. Not as volatile either as we've seen in the past, just kind of that stair-stepping move to the upside that's been very, very impressive after we'd had that big sell-off and this big pushback into this 50,000 sort of a range. So yesterday, energy getting under pressure. It was down about 1.5%. That was something that was leading, along with financials, down a little bit more than 0.5% yesterday. Some of the moves of note, well, what was really moving some of these financials? How about the move that we had yesterday in Wells Fargo? This is a name that I say that with a little bit of frustration because I am an owner of that stock and some calls. But I will tell you, down 5% yesterday. Then you start to look over at some of the beta names in the energy space with Devon and Marathon and Diamondback and Valero and all those types of names, down 3.5%, all the way down to as much as 4.5% to the downside. So that was getting hit. An area that wasn't getting hit, but was really accelerating to the upside, some really nice gains. And they are just becoming just like the beta names that we talk about in energy, but these Chinese names. A really nice move to the upside that we got out of PDD. You look at JD, you look at Baidu, you look at all of these various names, Trip.com. That was one of the unusuals the other day that we used. FXI, that's a great example of that entire world. But, and oftentimes I tell you guys that I don't like using the indexes. Why? Because of the fact that they're an index. They're not going to give you the same bang for your buck. But FXI has been moving with all that option activity that we've been talking about. Went from 38 to 41 in a hurry. So there's some really nice gains on some of those options that we've been talking about of late in the FXI, which has been much more active than it had been. There's no doubt about that. The weekly jobless claims, new pandemic low. They actually were lower than expected. So that was something that really did give the markets a nice move to the upside right in the pre-market, up about 100 points on the Dow. We're up about 50 points on the NASDAQ. NASDAQ was accelerating. It started to pull back a little bit. Last I looked, it was up maybe 30 points or so. It's been up as high as about 70 points, but pulled back a little bit. And I think we're seeing some of that pullback initiated because of what we were seeing with technology that was a little bit stronger and then started to ease on back. But I'd have to take a look. I'll tell you what, the great move that we are seeing is in the Dow itself. And the Dow started off about 100 points, went up 140, looked like it was pulling back with the NASDAQ. Last I looked, we were seeing that the Dow was up 160 points. So that's the higher end of the first hour of trade today. Crude moving to the upside. Nice $69 level for crude. The 10-year sort of stuck in the mud right about 1.3. We talked about Bitcoin already. Look at the volatility index now. Volatility index getting suppressed even more as it's pushed down underneath 16 and now trading, let's call it 1580 or somewhere in that kind of a range. Every single sector early on was in the green and nobody in the red. That's changed a little bit as we've gotten a little deeper into the day, and that is something that we normally do see as we get into the day, some of the winners and some of the losers. But sectors, very, very important. You look at energy, it was up 1.5% very early. It's up nearly 3% now. So a really big a move that we are seeing in the energy space. That is driving Occidental and Devon and Apache and Halliburton and ConocoPhillips all moving to the upside. I just talked about those energy names yesterday, down 3.5 to 4.5%. Well, today they're up 3.5 to 4.5% and probably making some bigger gains even off of that as we speak right now. Apple moving early again, pushing up towards that 155 level. We've had so much option activity in Apple, in many of these different names in the tech space of late, and they have moved very, very rapidly along the way. So got a couple of unusuals, and I've got the halftime report to get ready for as well. That's just coming up in about 90 minutes or so. So Netflix, number one, very interesting. Stock was trading about 585 all the way up to about 594. And what were we seeing? We're seeing tomorrow's expiring, of course, September 3rd. We are seeing the 600 strike calls being bought. They started under $1. They were 96 cents when they started buying these calls. Finished buying all the way up well over $3 for these calls. So some aggressive positioning going in, 7,500 of those trading, looking for Netflix to not only make some more gains, but maybe even explode through 600. Let's remember, this does expire tomorrow. So this move has to happen either today or obviously tomorrow, or that's it. Next, Blink. Blink Charging. We talk about these EV stocks. I got to tell you, today, the EV, the electric vehicle world is spattered all over the place in terms of what we are seeing on the unusual option activity. This one stood out for me because of the fact that it was early and it hit 2,300 of tomorrow's expiring September 3rd, the 35 call. Stock was trading 33 to up to a little bit higher than 34. They started buying the calls at 30 cents up to about 55 cents. Again, this is EV charging and that whole sort of process and so forth. So this one could be pretty interesting as well. Can it break through? We will see. We've seen some option activity. We'll see if there's a little follow through as well, because we are seeing just about every EV maker or charging or whatever category, but somewhere in that space, we've seen an incredible amount of activity early on in the first hour. It's just amazing. So I will see you at the halftime today. Guys, make sure, guys and gals, that you are educated in the derivatives world. It's the best thing in the world. You heard me talk about those volumes. I bring it up every single day. And why do I do that? Because it is meaningful. These numbers are absolutely extraordinary, and we continue to see it every day. It's not a pitch. It's just telling you, if you want to be a part of the markets and use leverage, the option world is something. But you've got to be educated so that you can have an opportunity for the success that we think that you can make if you are in the derivatives world, and use it in your favor for hedging and all kinds of other different things. Folks, have a great day of trading. We'll look forward to seeing you tomorrow. I'll see you on the halftime report.